The reason why I picked this title is because I was here on Sunday to participate in the opening ceremony of the Mitraville Stupa and Mitraville itself. So I thought it would be appropriate to talk more about the Stupa, although you would have heard what Bhante Mahinda said about the Stupa, and also what the other organizing committee members, particularly Dr. Stewart, about the extraordinary circumstances that led to the establishment of Mitraville, getting that piece of land and other things. I would like to approach it from a historical point of view. Where did this idea of stupa as a place of worship come from? Now, the word stupa is actually a Sanskrit word, and it comes from the Pali thupa, Thupa. I don't think I wrote it on the board. What I wrote there is stupa, which is a Sanskrit term, rather than the Pali term thupa. When I made the research, I found out that there were only 3 or 4 instances in the early Pali canon where the word thupa was mentioned. One is found in the Vinaya Pitaka, the basket of discipline concerning the rules and regulations for monastics. And then there is a story of a group of bhikkhunis, a notorious group of 6 bhikkhunis, or bhikkhunis belonging to the group of 6. One of their leaders had passed away. And so, after having cremated her, they took her remains and made a thupa. So that seems to be the first occurrence in the early Pali canon. We regard the Vinaya Pitaka as early, although some scholars say that many of these origin stories for the training rules could have been a later insertion. So what happened was that after they built the stupa for their deceased member, they went to the stupa and started to lament and wail and make a lot of noise. Now at that time, one venerable Kapitaka, was staying in the cemetery, in the charnel ground. That is part of his practice, to stay in the cemetery. And he was disturbed by the wailing of the bhikkhunis. So when the bhikkhunis were not around, he destroyed the stupa. And then when the bhikkhunis found out, they were very angry. And they plotted to kill that monk. They were even fiercer than the monk. The monk is fierce enough to go and destroy their stupa. And the bhikkhunis were even fiercer. They wanted to kill that monk. Who is that monk? That monk is actually Venerable Upali's Upachaya. Venerable Upali is the foremost disciple of the Buddha who is an expert in the Vinaya. He was actually Venerable Upali's Upachaya, a preceptor, the one who ordained him. Somehow, word got to Venerable Upali that these bhikkhunis were plotting to kill his Upachaya. And so he tipped him off. He told his Upachaya that these bhikkhunis are coming after him, so better make yourself scarce. So that was the incident whereby the word thupa was used, which I found in the Vinaya Pitaka. So what happened was, word was carried to the Buddha, and the Buddha laid a rule for the bhikkhunis. Because of that incident, bhikkhunis are not supposed to disparage or scold bhikkhus. Anyway, that is one instance. Another instance is in the Udana. Udana is in the Khuddaka Nikaya, which is the minor collections of the Buddha's teachings. And there's this very famous story of Bahiya. Bahiya was a renunciant of another sect. One day, he was inspired to come and see the Buddha. He traveled a long distance from the place where he stayed, and he came to see the Buddha in Savatthi. Bahiya was dressed in robes made of tree bark. He was an ascetic, so he was dressed in robes made of tree bark. And he came to Savatthi, where the Buddha was staying. But at that time, the Buddha was actually going on alms round in town. And so he followed the Buddha and requested the Buddha to teach him the Dhamma in brief. And the Buddha said, "Wait a minute, Bahiya, I'm on my alms round. It is not appropriate for you to ask me that question." But Bahiya insisted, and he kept on asking second time and the third time. So after the third time, the Buddha relented and gave him very, very brief instructions. I think some of you who are more knowledgeable would know what it is. It is, in the seen, there shall only be the seen. In the heard, there shall only be the heard. In the sensed, there shall only be the sensed. In the cognized, there shall only be the cognized. Thus, you should train yourself. But I will not go on to the next part, which is kind of very enigmatic. I think it will take some time for me to try to explain it to you. But anyway, what happened was, after Bahiya heard that, he got enlightened. He was awakened. Because he was awakened, then he decided to become a bhikkhu, a monk in the Buddha's dispensation. So he requested for ordination as a monk, although he's already an ascetic. He has already renounced the world by himself. But the Buddha said, "You do not have a bowl and you do not have robes. I cannot ordain you without a bowl and robes. Go find yourself a bowl and robes." So Bahiya left the Buddha and he went to look for a bowl and robes. Soon after he left the Buddha, he was gored to death by a cow. Later on, the Buddha and some monks were going around Savatthi and they saw his body by the roadside. And the Buddha said, "Monks, take his body, cremate it, and make a stupa for him. For he is one of your brahmacharyas, one of the practitioners of the holy life." And also very interestingly, in the list of honors, where the Buddha listed out his disciples who are foremost in certain fields. For example, Venerable Sariputta was declared foremost in wisdom. Venerable Moggallana was declared foremost in psychic power. Venerable Upali was declared foremost in Vinaya. Bahiya was declared foremost in swift knowledge. Because he just heard this: in the seen, there shall be seen; in the heard, there shall be the heard; the sensed, there shall be the sensed; in the cognized, there shall be the cognized. Thus shall you train yourself. And just hearing that, he got enlightened. So he's the person who got enlightened the fastest. Interestingly, this is a posthumous ordination, because he never got ordained. But the Buddha said in that list that among my bhikkhus, he is the foremost in terms of swift knowledge. Right? So, although he never got himself physically ordained by the Buddha when he was alive, this is a posthumous ordination. The only one, I think, in the Vinaya Pitaka. So anyway, after saying that, he told the monks to cremate him and make a stupa for him. So this is the second occurrence. The third occurrence of the word stupa comes in two other places. One is in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Twos, where the Buddha says that there are two persons, two individuals who are worthy of a stupa. The one is Chakravarti, a universal monarch, and the other is Sammasambuddha. Two. This is probably just an extract from a longer version that is found in the Book of Force, as well as in Mahaparinibbana Sutta. There the Buddha, when he was about to pass away, was asked by Mahatma Ananda what Venerable Ananda or the other monks should do with regard to the Buddha's body after he passes away. And the Buddha said, "You monks don't have to worry about this. Let the lay people take care of this." And then he asked, then what should the lay people do? What should be done towards the body of the Tathagata? Then the Buddha said, well, he should do what should be done to his body as according to what should be done to the body of a Chakravarti. Then Asmananda asked him, what should be done to the body of a Chakravarti? And so the Buddha gave a description of how he should be cremated, and then a stupa should be built for him. In connection with that, the Buddha talked about 4 individuals who are worthy of stupas. And they are the Chakravarti, the universal monarch, the Sammasambuddha, a Pacceka Buddha, and a Buddha Savaka, a disciple of the Buddha. So these are about the only places in the whole of the Vinaya Pitaka and in the early Pali suttas where the word tupa is mentioned. And as for worship, it is only in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta and also in the Anguttara Nikaya Book of Force that the Buddha talked about the significance of this stupa. He says, when the stupa is built and put at the crossroads, then people, when they come and they see this stupa, then they would recollect what this structure was built in memory of the Chakravarti, the universal monarch who rules righteously, in memory of the Sammasambuddha. And so the Buddha says, when people have such wholesome thoughts recollecting the virtues of these 4 people, then it will bring them welfare and happiness in future. In regard to this, you all would probably have known, if you have gone on a pilgrimage in India, if you have known that there are 8 places of pilgrimage that you should go to, right? Actually, in the Pali canon, only 4 places are mentioned. The other 4 are added by the commentaries. And now there are more than 8. If you go there, the locals will tell you, okay, this one is a stupa for Ananda, this one is for Sariputta, this is for Moggallana, this is for Angulimala, and so forth. So you got many stupas coming out. Anyway, this particular passage in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, where the Buddha talked about 4 individuals who are worthy of a stupa, and then after that the Buddha says, well, and there are these 4 inspiring places, Samvejaniya Thana, where the disciples of the Buddha, whether they are bhikkhus or bhikkhunis or upasakas or upasikas, when they visit on a pilgrimage, and then they have clarity of mind, full of faith and devotion, then if they should die in that pilgrimage, they will be reborn in a good destination in heaven. This is what he says. But note that the Buddha says, if somebody were to die while on pilgrimage, not after he comes back. So after he comes back, no guarantee that you will go to heaven. It's only while you're on the way and maybe you get a heart attack and you die, maybe you can go to heaven. Okay, now, if you see on the board, I say that there are 4 types of cetiya, right? But so far we have been talking about stupa, not cetiya. So now let's look at the word cetiya. Where does it come from? And how is it related to stupa? Actually, in the Pali canon, in the early suttas and in the Vinaya, the word cetiya is not equivalent to stupa. Cetiya refers to the shrines of devas, deva shrines. All these Dato Kong shrines and all these things, these are called cetiyas. And it is only in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta that the word cetiya comes to be used in a Buddhist context. The word pilgrimage in Pali is called cetiya charika. Cetiya is shrines, charika is going around the shrines. Well, according to the way it is phrased, then these 4 inspiring places, the Buddha's birth, his enlightenment, his first sermon, and his passing away. These 4 inspiring places are Samvejaniya Thana. But the word cetiya charika is used, which means it's a pilgrimage, visiting, going around the shrines. So it's implied that these 4 places are shrines. Implied that they are cetiya. That's why you go around on a pilgrimage. But I've made some research, and going around on a pilgrimage is actually a Hindu practice. Somehow it crept into Buddhism. And the only place that is mentioned about this is in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, which is also very strange because in the other suttas, the Buddha always criticized monks and nuns who renounce in order to be reborn in a good existence, especially in the heavenly realm. Right? Whereas this passage about making a pilgrimage says that any monk or nun, lay disciple, who goes on a pilgrimage with clarity of mind, full of faith and devotion, if he or she should die, then he or she will be reborn in heaven. Anyway, this is the first occurrence of the word Cetiya used in the Buddhist context. By the time the commentaries came, Cetiya became equivalent to Stupa. That's why now in the commentaries, there's a lot of passages on worship of the stupas, worship of the Bodhi tree, worship of the Cetiya. Cetiya equals stupa. This is particularly a Sri Lankan specialty. Sri Lankans love stupas and they love Bodhi pujas. They always do a lot of Bodhi pujas. Why is that so? That's because in the commentaries, there are 3 types of Cetiyas that I mentioned. You can see there are 4 types. These 4 types are actually a composite. They are actually 3. But out of these 3, there are 2 sets of 3. 4 of them are common. The rest are all overlapping. Okay, the first set of 3, it talks about Paribhoga, Dhatu, or Saririka, and Dhamma. Actually, this first set, this 3. Paribhoga, Dhatu, and Dhamma. The second set is Paribhoga, Saririka, and Uddisaka. There's an overlap. So actually, Dhatu and Saririka are similar. Now, this set, Saririka, Paribhoga, and Uddisaka, is found in the commentary to Kalinga Bodhi Jataka. So this is the story that I think all of you will be familiar with if you have gone on a pilgrimage. As you all know, the Buddha stayed a long time in Savatthi, in Jetavana, but sometimes he will go on long journeys elsewhere to preach the Dhamma, and he would not be resident in Savatthi, in Jetavana. So it seems that the people in Savatthi missed the Buddha, and they requested for something that they could pray to, worship in his absence. So Anathapindika asked Asma-Ananda to ask the Buddha. So Asma-Ananda asked the Buddha, how many types of Cetiya there are? This is in the commentary, it's not in the suttas. And then the Buddha says there are 3 types. One is called a Saririka, and one is the Paribhogika, the other is the Uddisaka. What is meant by Saririka? Saririka is the body of the Buddha. Sarira means the body. I think in Mandarin you say Salisa. Actually, it's the transliteration from the Pali or the Sanskrit, Sarira. Sarira is the body. The Buddha says, Sariraka Cetiya is connected with the body of the Buddha. And this Cetiya can only happen after the Buddha passes away. So it is equivalent to Dhatu. Dhatu is actually also the relics, so-called relics of Buddha's body after cremation. So Sariraka is all these bodily relics. Then the other one is Uddisaka. Uddisaka means dedication, something that you dedicate to the Buddha. So in this commentary, he says, this Uddisaka Cetiya, the dedicated Cetiya, dedicated shrine, is not something physical. It is only something that is internal, that the mind cherishes. That's what this commentary says. And then the other one is Paribhogika Cetiya. Paribhoga Cetiya means anything that the Buddha has used before. then that can be made into a shrine to worship in the Buddha's absence. So, the Bodhi tree was used by the Buddha, wasn't it? He sat under the Bodhi tree and he got awakened. So, at that time, Mahatma Ananda said, since the other two, one is not physical, and the other one can only be created after you pass away, then can we have the Bodhi tree as a shrine for us to worship when you're not around? But that was in Savatthi. Where was the Buddha enlightened? He wasn't enlightened in Savatthi, right? He was enlightened in Bodh Gaya. And so where's the Bodhi tree? The Bodhi tree is in Bodh Gaya, not in Savatthi. So how are you going to transport the Bodhi tree from Bodh Gaya to Savatthi? It's not like these days. These days you plant instant trees. You just dig up the whole thing in a crane and then you bring it and put it there. So this requires even higher technology. They use psychic power. So it seems that Asma Ananda requested the Buddha, and then the Buddha agreed, and so Asma Ananda requested Asma Moggallana to use his psychic power to get a sapling, a graft, a sapling of the tree of the Bodh Gaya to plant it in Savatthi, in Jetavana. That's why it's called Ananda Bodhi. So nowadays, it seems that the original Bodhi tree was destroyed, and then they replanted and destroyed and replanted and destroyed. So the current Bodhi tree that we have is not the real one. It seems that the original one, part of it was taken to Savatthi and planted in Jetavana. The other part was taken to Sri Lanka and planted in Anuradhapura. It was during the time of Bhante Mahinda, when he asked his sister, Venerable Sanghamita, to bring over from India to Sri Lanka. So after that, they took the sapling from the Anuradhapura and replanted it in India. So it's like going back and forth. Okay, so this is how the three types of Chaitya comes. This one is about the Paribhoga, something that has been used by the Buddha, which is the Bodhi tree. That explains why the Sri Lankans worship the Bodhi tree. In fact, in Sri Lanka, it is a criminal offense to damage a Bodhi tree. No, you cannot even trim a Bodhi tree. So, because it's held in such high regard. But these are all not canonical, these are all commentarial. Okay, then in another commentary, there is a classification into Paribhoga, Dhatu and Dhamma. Yeah, you can see there. Alright, so Paribhoga means anything that the Buddha uses. It could be his bowl, it could be the Bodhi tree, it could be his robe, whatever. And then Dhatu would be his relics, the cremation. And then Dhamma would be any Dhamma. For example, the Paticca Samuppada, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, they would inscribe on palm leaf and then they would enshrine it, put it underground somewhere, and then make a stupa over it. That's called a Dhammachedi. These are all basically very external and very devotional in character. I know that the majority of Buddhists are devotional. Unfortunately, I'm not a devotional type. Yeah. For me, although stupas, sometimes they look very beautiful, I don't really get any inspiration from looking at stupas. Maybe aesthetic appreciation, but nothing spiritual or inspiring for me. But as Bhante Mahinda explained on Sunday, there are various interpretations of how you want to look at a stupa. In fact, all these various designs of stupa, these very intricate designs of how many tiers and how many sides, came about very much later. The commentary talks about how the first stupa was built in Sri Lanka, Tuparama. The stupa in Mitraville right now is based on the proportions of Tuparama that is found in Anuradhapura today. But that is not the original shape. When the ancient Bante Mahinda, not our present one, when the ancient Arahant Mahinda came over to Sri Lanka, the king was converted to Buddhism and he wanted to establish the first stupa. So he asked Bante Mahinda how he should build a stupa. What shape should it be like? And then Bante Mahinda said, it should look like a heap of paddy, a heap of rice. We say rice in English, but in Malay we call paddy lah. A heap of paddy. So that's very simple, isn't it? What does the heap of paddy look like? It's just a cone shape. It's not even a pyramid. A pyramid has got 4 sides, but this is just a cone shape. It's a very simple mound. But through the ages, artists and sculptors, they like to make symbols. So all this symbolism of 4-sided thing, signifying the Four Noble Truths, octagons symbolizing the Noble Eightfold Path, how many tears symbolizing 7 factors of enlightenment, and so forth. All these things came about later. Our current Bante Mahinda said on Sunday, these are all just hardware. It is just to inspire you to come to see the stupa, go inside, and get a feel of spiritual energy if you are sensitive enough. And then from there on, you're supposed to connect to the Dhamma. That's not the end of it. After you build the stupa, that's not the end of the story. That's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. There's the hardware. Once you've got the hardware, then you got to put in the software. Well, what's the point? You look at all those monuments that we have nowadays. We have Borobudur, we have Angkor Wat. But what happened to Buddhism? What happened to the Buddhism in Borobudur? It's all gone. What happened to the Buddhism in Angkor Wat? So it's not the monuments that matter. Of course, the monuments appeal to the majority of Buddhists who are devotional. But one should not stop there, right? That is just to bring you there, and you should make a further connection with the Dhamma. So, coming back to the 4 types of cetiya or stupas. 1, Uddisaka. The Uddisaka cetiya, according to one commentary, says that it's not something physical. It is something mental. That is the virtues of the Buddha that you cherish in your heart. That is the cetiya within. But another commentary says that the Uddisaka cetiya refers to a Buddha image, a Buddha rupa. These 2 commentaries contradict one another, because one says it's not physical and the other one says it's actually a physical image of the Buddha. But as you all know, there were no Buddha images from the beginning. Right? It was only about more than 500 years after the Buddha passed away that the first Buddha image was created. Probably from Greece, from Mathura, because the people in Mathura were very good at making sculptures of gods and things. So, you could look at the cetiya within as either the Uddisaka cetiya, following one commentary, or you could look at it as the Dhamma cetiya, the stupa of the Dhamma. And what is this Dhamma? Of course, the Dhamma could be defined in many ways, but if you are familiar with the Swakhato, Bhagavata, Dhammo, the chanting, that there are 6 qualities of the Dhamma, the first one of which is well expounded. Well explained is the Buddha's Dhamma, which means to say whatever that is found in all scriptures. But it's not so easy because we got so many scriptures. We have the Pali tradition, we have the Chinese tradition, we have the Tibetan tradition, we have the Sanskrit tradition. So many scriptures, and some of them do not agree with one another. There are contradictions between them. So how can we really know which is the true Dhamma if we just rely on texts? There's one particular sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, in the Salayatana Samyutta, the connected discourses with regard to the 6 sense bases. And in this discourse, the Buddha asked the monks, is there a way whereby, without relying on the 5 grounds of accepting something, one can declare oneself to be an arahant? Let me explain. When we want to accept something, we do so in one or combination of 5 grounds. The first one is out of faith. There are many faiths in this world. You have the Christian faith, you have the Muslim faith, you have Hindu, you have Buddhist, and so forth. Each person who believes in a particular faith does so because he believes. Very simple. You cannot question another person's faith because faith has no rationale. Either you believe or you don't. Right or not? There's no way that you can argue that your faith is wrong because faith is only a belief. Okay, so the first one is you accept something out of pure faith. It could be blind faith. Mostly it is just devotional faith. The second is you accept something because you like it. Just sukha, you just like it, so you just accept it. Third one is you accept it because it is part of our tradition. And you know, we Chinese have many traditions. One of which is Cheng Beng. Every Chinese will tell you that it's part of our tradition, so we do it. We just keep on doing it. Then, fourth is through your own speculation. Some people are intellectuals. They are speculators. They like to speculate their ideas and their theories, and then once they formulate a hypothesis or a theory, they hang on to it as though it is the real thing. That is the fourth way. The fifth way, the fifth ground of accepting something, is accepting it based on somebody else's theory, not your own. You may not be such a great thinker, you may not be such a great speculator, but you are a reasonable person. You listen to somebody giving his argument of hypothesis and you say, yeah, that sounds reasonable, and you accept it. So, when we accept anything, we do so out of these 5 grounds. One of the 5 or combination of them. And this happens every day, you know. For example, you open up the newspaper, you read a particular piece of news. How do you know it's true? You don't know. You just believe it. You listen to the news. Are you sure it's true? Are you sure it's not manipulated? Who knows? And then nowadays, there are so many things in the internet. You go there and you open it up. How do you know it's true? Nobody knows. You know, there's this internet thing going around about how fantastic, how nutritious durian is. All the durian lovers will just cite that. See, all durian is fantastic, it's good for this and this, all the nutritional value is there. But you go and see a Chinese physician, says, if you are sick, don't take durian. It is poison, especially if you got cancer. So we base our acceptance of things out of one or a combination of these 5 grounds. Either faith, because you like it, because it's your tradition, because you are a speculator, or because you are reasonable and you accept somebody else's good argument or theory. So the Buddha says, is there a way whereby, without relying on any of these 5, one can still declare that I'm become an arahant? Is there a way? What do you think? So, when the Buddha asked the monks are like you lah. All kept quiet, they don't say man. Says, Bhante, you are the one who started the Dharma. You tell us and we will bear it in mind. So that's what you're going to say too, right? So the Buddha says, yes, there is the way. And this is the way. When a monk is aware, after seeing something with the eye, and then there is either greed, hatred, or delusion in him, he knows there is greed or hatred or delusion in me, after having seen something with the eye. Or, if there is no greed, no hatred, no delusion, after having seen something with the eye, he also knows. Right? So basically, very simple. You just have to look at your own mind. Watch your own mind to see whether there's greed, hatred, or delusion. After you see something, you hear something, you smell something, you taste something, you feel something with your body, or whether you have anything in your mind. You think of something, any thoughts. You just have to look at all these things and just identify whether there's greed, hatred, or delusion. If it's there, you know it's there. If it's not there, you know it's not there. Very simple. Just by doing this, you can eventually become an arahant. And so the Buddha asked the monks, if somebody were to acknowledge within himself that there is great hatred and delusion when it is there, and acknowledge that they are absent if they are not there, is this something that you accept based on faith, on liking, on tradition, on theorizing, on accepting somebody's theory? No, isn't it? It's a direct personal experience. And if you can see that with wisdom, that will eventually lead you to enlightenment. But it's easier said than done. It's easier said than done, because most of the time we get carried away by our senses, by our ideas, by our interpretations, by our perceptions. So, although it's possible, we have to cultivate regularly in order to arrive at the final destination. And I think, in my opinion, this is the ultimate cetiya that we have to open within. We have to start to establish it. You know how long it took to create the Stupa in Mitraville? 7 years. 7 years to get the land and get all the permit and everything. Although it took about 2 years to construct it, but it took so long. There's only the hardware. How about your software? How much longer will it take? Maybe 7 lifetimes? Who knows? Right? So we got to start somewhere. And how do we do that? I'm going to give you very simple instructions. First, you have got to understand how the mind works and how your senses work. It's really so very simple. You know the 5 senses: your eye, your ear, your nose, your tongue, your body. These 5 senses can only be conscious of their respective objects that are happening right now. You can only see something when your eyes are open and the object is there, right? Can you see something which you saw last night and it's not here? Cannot. You heard a nice song before you came, but now can you hear it? Cannot. It's the same with all the other senses. The 5 senses can only be conscious of their respective objects that are happening right now. And each sense can only take its own object. The eye can only see, cannot hear, cannot smell, cannot taste. Right? The body, the tongue can only taste, it cannot see, cannot hear, cannot smell. So each of them are very specific. First point that you need to know, very simple. Yeah, the 5 senses can only take present object. But the mind is different. The mind is the 6th sense. The mind can take objects of the past, the present, future, imagination, and nibbana. Can take everything. Right or not? For example, when you're fast asleep at night, and you're not even conscious that your senses are still there. Right? You can't even know that you're in your room, you don't know that you're sleeping on your bed, you don't hear anything, but you're having a nightmare. Yeah? And then in that nightmare, you feel that robbers are running after you, you're trying to run for your life, you feel a fear, and your heart is pumping, but all that is in your mind. You don't really feel that with your body, except your heartbeat perhaps, and your breathing rate, because you're excited. Well, that is what will cause you to wake up. That was caused by the mind. The mind stimulated the heart to beat faster and the lungs to breathe faster. Although you cannot listen to the song that you heard before you came here, but your mind can recall it, can't you? Can you recall the time when you were a kid staying in a house with your parents? You can, right? Very vividly. Even though the house is no longer there, it's completely destroyed, but still it is very vivid in your memory. And also you can imagine things in the future. So that is the second point. The nature of the mind is that it can take objects of the past, the present, the future, imagination, and beyond. The third point is that the mind can only take one object at a time. Of course, some of you would object. How can that be so? Now I'm looking at you, I'm also listening, I'm also aware that I'm sitting on a chair. So are you not multitasking? But scientists have proved that there's no such thing as multitasking. They have really wired the brains of their subjects, and they found that when a person is in so-called multitasking mode, certain parts of his brain are being stimulated one after another very quickly. So, actually, the mind moves very fast. It's moving from one object to another, but it can actually take only one object at a time. So, knowing these 3 points can bring you very far. What is it that makes us suffer, even though our bodies are comfortable? Our minds, isn't it? We think of those things of the past, our past grudges, our dissatisfaction, our resentment, our unhappiness, our hatred, our jealousy, and also our concerns for the future, our worries for the future. What's going to happen if this does not happen? What's going to happen if? All these things are causing us suffering, past and the future. So if you want to disengage yourself from such unproductive, dysfunctional thinking, it's very simple. Just change the subject. Try to focus on what is happening in the present moment, in your body, for example. When you do that, when the mind is busy trying to be in the present moment, being aware of the senses, then it's got no time to think of the past or the future. So there's a very easy way of stabilizing your mind. It's a very easy way of composing your mind. Although people talk about meditation, people have this misconception that meditation means sitting cross-legged with your eyes closed and your back straight, then focusing on one object. That's the only time you can meditate. And then you're supposed to shut off all thoughts, cannot think. Focus on just one object. Then only you can get composure, calmness, and serenity. Well, that's one way. It's possible. If you can do that, also you can get calmness and composure and serenity. But how many of you can afford the time to do that? But if you're able to train your mind to always come back to the present moment. For example, right now, you are listening to me. Are you aware that you are sitting on a chair? Can you be aware that you are sitting on a chair? You can, right? There are so many parts of the body that are in contact with the chair, your limbs with your limbs, your skin with the air, with your clothing, your feet on the ground. So if you're able to bring your attention back to the body, this is very grounding. It keeps your mind stable. Otherwise, your mind will be distracted by thoughts about the past, the present, the future. But I'm not saying that you completely cut off thoughts, because you need to think. What I'm suggesting is that you try to minimize unproductive thinking. How can you ever have the chance to differentiate between productive and unproductive thinking if your mind is turbulent? You've got no chance. You cannot even know that you are thinking. You're already in the thought. So you have to train the mind to be outside, to step back and look at what's happening. So this is the initial first step. Try to come back to the senses, whatever you're doing. Particularly the body. The body is more neutral than what you can see and hear. So when you are listening to a Dhamma talk, when you're talking to a person, try to anchor yourself in the body. Maybe 30%, 40%, the other 60% you're listening to the person and looking in your own mind. When you anchor yourself in your body, then you have a chance to step back and look. When you have a chance to step back and look, then only you will be able to distinguish, oh, this is a thought. This is the productive thought. This is the unproductive thought. When you are able to distinguish, then only you can select what you want to pursue. If you realize or distinguish that this is unproductive thought, I cannot solve the problem. It's been bothering me for some time, now making me worse, I can't even concentrate on what I'm doing. So that's an unproductive thought. Put it aside for the moment. Do what you have to do first. So when you do that, you conserve your energy. Unproductive thoughts, put aside. Concentrate on what you're doing. Stay with your senses. You have productive thoughts like you need to plan for your work, for your family, in your relationship with people, then go ahead and think. Some years ago, there was one professor of biology in MU who was retired, and he came to give a talk in SBS for a Dharma camp. And he said that actually about 80% of energy is used by the human being for thinking. And the other 20% is only for the other bodily functions. So you can imagine that the less you think, the more energy you conserve. You see, when you go on a retreat, you don't think so much, because on a retreat you're supposed to meditate, you're supposed to be mindful, stay in the present moment, so you have less thoughts. You'll find that you are very energized. Many people are very surprised to discover that they don't feel hungry, even though they are on 8 precepts, and even though that's the first time that they are taking 8 precepts. Why? Because they don't need so much energy. They don't burn up so much energy. It's conserved. You're bringing your attention back to the senses, to be mindful, to be in the present moment, to watch your mind. And so your energy is conserved. That's why people who have done very good meditation, gone very deep in their meditation, they can absorb themselves in certain mental states, and then they sleep hardly, 2-3 hours a day, and they can feel fresh. Okay, anyway, this is only the basic. The basic is to try to come back to your senses in whatever you do throughout the day, so that you will be in a position to distinguish between productive and unproductive thought. And when your mind is on idle mode, you're churning out all those unproductive thoughts, put them away. Come back to the present moment. Now, before I close, I just want to recap one very important thing, the 3 points. The 5 senses can only take objects of the present moment. The mind can take objects of the past, present, future, imagination and beyond. And the mind can take one object at one time. If you just know this, then you can never suffer from insomnia. Because when you cannot fall asleep at night, it's because you think too much. You want to stop your thinking? Very simple. Relax, be aware of the body, be aware of the aircon, be aware of the clock, and soon you'll fall asleep. So I hope that all of you will start to establish the JTR within. Since you have already finished Mitraville, Stupa, time to start to build up your software and open up the Stupa within yourselves for the good of yourselves and for the many. Okay, I shall stop here and open up to the floor for questions.
Thank you, Pandey. So we now start the Q&A sessions.
Pandey, can you please repeat like you said, the 5 senses can sense only the 5 things. The last one is the mind can sense all the senses. I missed the second one. Can you please repeat again? Thank you.
The first one is that the 5 senses can only take each respective object of the present moment. The second is that the mind can take all the 5 sense objects, as well as concepts and objects of the past, present, future, imagination, and beyond. Alright? And the third point is that the mind can only take one object at a time, although very fast. Okay?
I have a question, Pandey. When making an offering to the Sangha members, some feels that if you personally give food to the Mahathira, it's more meritorious than giving to Sangha member who is not Mahathira. What is Pandey's understanding in accordance with the Pali Sutta? Are the merits the same or different? Giving the same item in the same event, sitting on the same bench.
The Buddha says that the highest will be giving to the Sangha as a whole, not to an individual. But if you're talking about individuals, it's not according to seniority, but according to attainment. Whether that person is a Sammasambuddha or Pachika Buddha, an Arahant, an Nagami or Sakadagami or Sotapan, in that way. So not in terms of seniority.
Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante, grades are the merits of building a stupa. In my t-shirt here.
Yeah, where does that come from?
I don't know, somebody gave it to me.
No, I mean not the t-shirt, but the words.
The wordings, right? Okay. Now, these are just devotional when we first pick up the Dharma or pick up the understanding of Buddhism. That is in the beginning. I believe in the beginning when we walk into the Dharma, we like to do a lot of devotional things like building temples, building chetiyas, building stupas, thinking that or having the perception that it's going to give us the merit to pave the way for us to actually walk the Dharma, like what you have just told us. That is only the hardware. The software is the mind. Like yesterday, the day before yesterday, or during the construction period, there are a lot of people that are just the devotional type who goes to Mitraville to do a lot of offerings and things like that. By doing so, what is their mind state in the beginning? Thinking that, oh, this is the merit, this is enough, I have done that. Like just now, Brother Enki was also saying, doing dana as well. All these are just devotional, or just bringing ourselves into the Dharma. The final thing is to walk the Dharma faithfully or sincerely, or for that matter, truly. So, Bhante, what's your advice or opinion for those who are still in the early stage? For those who already understand your teaching by walking the Dharma, doing meditation, taking up the 5 precepts, walk the path, shall we carry on building stupas? Thank you, Bhante.
That really depends on the individual, what sort of inclinations you have. Yeah, even some meditation masters who spend their whole life building toilets. Not just stupas, toilets and other constructions in the monastery, particularly in the Thai Forest Sangha. There's a lot of construction going on. And some people find that construction work is part of the practice. So it really depends on the individual. Whatever you do, whether it's construction work or formal meditation, in the end, it all comes back to watching the mind. To see how the mind works, whether the defilements are in your mind or not, and look at things in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta. So if you are able to involve yourself in construction work and yet do that sort of practice, and it doesn't hinder you, then why not? Anyone else? Yeah, so a couple of hands over there.
One more, Bhante. Following from what you said, if let's say a devotee were to be making a great offering, but inside the mind there is a strong desire to accumulate more wholesome merits, would that be considered a state of greed?
Yeah, of course.
Would that be encouraged?
That's encouraged. Yeah, there's also something very paradoxical about it, because this is encouraged in the suttas and in the commentaries, where they say that commentaries are especially full of stories of people doing dana and then making a wish when they make the dana. By this dana, may I achieve this, may I get this, may I get this. So it's all very materialistic in the commentaries. In the suttas, the Buddha talks about fulfilling your wishes also, but not merely by doing dana, by practicing sila as well, samadhi and panya.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Just a very short question. Good evening, Bhante. My name is Yim from Taiping. My upbringing is influenced heavily by my parents. I'm raised in an environment where we believe in accumulating merits, good merits especially. It's quite related to what Brother Fu said. My question is it right doing something good just purely to get good merits? Or is that the wrong intention? Because I find a great dilemma in doing something good just purely to get merits, instead of doing something good because you actually mean it. And I begin finding it's a wrong emphasis, and I think it's the wrong reason for doing things.
You are right. There seems to be a reaction to that, even in the historical development of Buddhism, where they introduced the idea of parami. Parami is defined as that which goes beyond self-interest. That you do something not because you want to get anything out of it, but in order to help that person without thinking of getting anything in return. That's why that is parami. If you're talking about just merits, helping people with the idea that you are getting merits and then later on you will be rewarded, that is only punya. That is merit. That is not parami. Parami is that which will lead you out of samsara. Merit does not lead you out of samsara. It makes you go round and round and round. Okay?
Just when you're talking about how the mind works, I suppose that what you imply was one's effort in bringing the mind to the present. This one's effort. But now there is also this very popular practice of regression therapy and mindfulness therapy. There's a technique that they use in hypnosis. How does it work? Because they are here involving another person's mind instead of one's own mind. Can this happen that somebody can actually influence your mind in hypnosis? And how does it work? Thank you.
Why not? Our minds are influenced by so many conditions. You are also influenced by what I'm saying tonight, aren't you? And I'm influenced by what I read, by what I see. Our minds are being influenced all the time. So when you look at your minds and really understand how it works, you will know that actually there's no one there. It's all these causes and conditions that are shaping the thoughts and your perceptions all the time. So when a patient undergoes regression hypnosis, regression therapy, for example, he is actually making use of the therapist as his external sati, external mindfulness, not his own. Because that therapist is guiding him. Okay, be calm, do this, do that, recall this, recall that, and all that. So he's just listening and allowing the mind to be conditioned by the therapist. And in many cases, they can recollect certain incidents in the past that have a direct relation to their particular problem. And because the help of the therapist, they are able to let go of their attachments, of the clinging to the past schemas, and they are able to solve their problem. All right? But this is only in a worldly sense. You could say this is an example of how the Four Noble Truths work, in the sense that there is suffering. The suffering is his current problem. And then the cause of the suffering is looking back at the past and clinging to a particular idea and then letting go of that idea through the help of the therapist. But he's not walking the path himself. He's depending on the therapist to help him to go back. Okay.
I read your booklet. I'm very attracted to the term spiritual materialism. Can you elaborate, please?
Spiritual materialism. This is a word that I borrowed from one very infamous Rinpoche called Chogyam Trungpa. When I was a very young monk, I was very impressed by his writings. He used to talk about spiritual materialism, which is actually about trying to get attainments. In the material world, we are always looking for credentials, isn't it? I mean, if you are looking for a job, you are trying to get a project, you always try to show off whatever that you have done so that you impress people and they can employ you. Right? So spiritual materialism is when you meditate or you do spiritual practice, you try to get attainments in order to impress yourself and impress others. I hope that clarifies it.
Good evening, Bhante. I'm Johnny Chia from Kota Kinabalu. Before we let you go, you have given us 3 teachings today. Could you further elaborate and illustrate how we apply it in daily life?
Okay, let's sit down now. Let's do a trial. Okay, everybody sit comfortably. You don't have to sit cross-legged, and just sit comfortably. You can keep your eyes open, but don't focus on anything. Don't focus on me, don't focus on anything. Just keep your eyes open and be aware that there is seeing. Seeing is happening, but don't focus on any particular object. Now, while your eyes are open, try to be also aware of your body. Your buttocks seated on your seat, your soles on the ground, your back resting on the backrest. Your arms touching one another or touching your legs. Your legs touching one another. Your eyes are still open, but you are scanning your body with your mind. Feel also the air in contact with your skin. And compare that with the sensation of your skin in contact with your clothing. As you scan through your body, relax. If there are any parts of the body that are tight or tense, relax. Now open up your awareness to be aware of sounds around you. Eyes open, ears open, body sensitive. If thoughts do arise, don't push them away, don't pursue them. Acknowledge them, let them go, come back to your senses. In the end, you just ask yourself one simple question. If the mind is not caught up in thoughts, what can it be aware of happening at the senses right now? Okay, so, you think it's workable? Very simple, right? Yeah, it's just a matter of remembering to do it, not getting caught in your thoughts, coming back to the senses. When your mind is busy with the senses, it's got no time to think. Okay?